So everybody, just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We're really excited to have you all here and appreciate just that you've taken your evening to come hang out with us and just learn more about our project. So my name's Aaron Stanley. I used to be the Washington correspondent for CoinDesk, which is a crypto blockchain publication. And about 2 months ago, I joined these guys, Sweetbridge. It's a really fun project, really grand vision. So I'm really excited to be a part of that. So Scott has a very intriguing background and a very interesting vantage point to bring into the blockchain universe. His previous company, well, basically he spent his whole career kind of at the apex of technology, finance, and supply chains, which are kind of three things that he says are kind of unique in themselves and don't traditionally go together. But he's got a very high-level view of how these things all kind of intersect. So his previous company, he actually built up from scratch in the early 90s and was developing smart contracts 2 decades before they even existed, and built that company from scratch up to be running supply chain auditing settlements for some of the largest companies in the world, processing trillions of dollars worth of transactions. And so he brings a very, a very sort of he understands how commerce works, how economies work, and he understands how blockchain and cryptocurrencies can really work in the real world. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thank you, Aaron. My goodness. I'm sorry, I talk loud. I get excited and that happens. One of the things I just want to, Carolyn, thank you for that presentation. I thought I'd add a note to that. I have met with well over 100 projects in this space in the last 12 months that are focused on solving problems in supply chains and commerce. People have real business models that are doing real things, not the fluffy heroin addict ICO stuff. I would say all but 2 have decided to move outside the United States. And why? Because they're good actors. When the only thing you have is uncertainty, the only people who stick around are the gluttons for punishment or the bad actors. And if the United States doesn't figure this out, I'm afraid we're going to lose a very valuable thing. But on to something completely different. So why the blockchain? And to get started here, I'd like to kind of poll the audience. If you don't mind kind of telling me a little bit about who you are, I want to ask a couple questions. Do we have anyone with an economics background in the room? 1, 2, 3, okay, 4, okay, a couple people. How about anybody who is technology oriented? Okay, about, quite a few, that's great. About half the room. How many people have what they would consider a reasonable understanding of what the blockchain is? Okay, most of the room, great. I won't ask how many people own any Bitcoin, but. So I want to put some context in place here about why the blockchain is important from my point of view. And that is that we are now entering the distributed age. This is the end of the industrial era, and that's not going to happen quickly. It's kind of going to happen gradually. It started actually already, and the mechanisms that caused this to happen started with the internet, which was about communicating originally from one party to other people through a website. And then it moved on from that to the social age, which was about connecting people together and exchanging information. And that moved on to the collaborative and economy sharing age. Parallel to this has been this thing called blockchain that's kind of come about. And all of these are going to merge here over the next few years along with a couple other technologies, IoT and AI, in ways that are going to usher in an entirely distributed economy. Now, this distributed age is going to be very different than anything that we are prepared for. None of our laws, none of our regulatory bodies, none of the things that we've put in place are anywhere close to being prepared for what is about to happen. We are going to have cars owning themselves, driving around the road, taking people, wherever they want to go. we're going to have tens of millions of IoT devices who actually buy and sell things, including their services, over which we have no idea how to basically manage this. We're going to have AIs that will be better at understanding financial trends and optimizing commercial transactions than any corporation and any individual could ever have been, and they will do it in ways that have nothing to do with any corporation and operate entirely in autonomous environments. So this is a very, very different world. And at the center of this world is going to be blockchain. So in this age, the key to business models is going to be something which sounds stodgy and old, and that's economics. Economics is going to be the core discipline for the future. And that's because we're building things which will operate as economic games. An economy requires a couple things. You got to have a way of creating some rules and agreements and enforcing them. You need a currency that can act as a transfer of value, a unit of account, and a store of value. And you need a market to compare value. If you have these things, then you can create an economy. And these are all things that the blockchain happens to be extraordinarily well suited for. And this means that you can create and program economic environments at a level that no one has ever dreamed and that would make an Orwellian proud. Now let's talk about probably what I consider the most understood and most significant thing that has happened in the blockchain. And that is that in order to conduct a commercial transaction, today we have 4 things that you have to compare with each other. The legal status, the actual financial status, the accounting state, and reality. This is known as an n squared minus n problem, which means there are actually 12 things you have to compare. If you look at all those arrows, there are 12 different things you have to compare. Almost all of our regulatory frameworks that are related to commercial activity and almost all of our auditing, almost all of the friction that exists in business today is because we don't trust that those states agree with one another and that they match reality. The blockchain allows us to create something that some people call smart contracts. They're neither smart nor are they contracts, they're just bodies of code. But those bodies of code basically will make sure that the legal status, accounting record, and financial payment always are synchronized. They are what technologists call atomic, which means they either all change state in a consistent manner or none of them change state. This means that you only have to compare one thing to reality. And this changes to only 2 things that you have to compare to. The amount of friction this is going to take out of society is almost impossible for people to correctly understand. Now, the other thing that's going to happen as a result of the blockchain that's also not talked about as much, but is somewhat talked about, is this paradigm. Now, today, we have businesses that are funded by shareholders. And in fact, we have laws in almost every country that says that if you're an officer of a business, you have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize the return to your shareholders. Now, let me explain what this law actually means for those of you who don't understand what that actually might imply. It means if you are going to be able to come up with a way of screwing your customer without the customer knowing it, guess what you are responsible for doing? Guess what you could go to jail for if you don't do? Maximize shareholder value. If you can find a way to basically move all your employees to a lower cost place, change out something in the insurance policy that basically sub-optimizes things for your employees' health, and you can do it to get better shareholder value, guess what you're supposed to do? Provide shareholder value. Now, there's all sorts of social things that we've done to try to make that bad. There's all sorts of things that we've done to try to say, oh, that's not really what we meant. Like we put in anti-pollution laws in the 70s to try to clean up the fact that we polluted all the rivers and, started deforested much of the world and did all sorts of other kinds of things. And we said, oh, no, we're just kidding. We don't really want to maximize shareholder value. But the problem is that equity and securities create a discipline that separates interests from one another. And the bottom of the totem pole is the customer. The one in the middle is the employees, and the shareholder is king. Now, in the blockchain, in blockchain-based environments that are crypto economic, you can actually create businesses that are actually run for and controlled by the customer. Now, this is a tremendously powerful innovation because the customer can actually control who the employees are, the ones that take care of the customer, and the employees have one servant, the customer. This puts the customer at the center of the universe. And so the blockchain is going to enable true customer-led businesses, kind of what people had in mind of co-ops and other kinds of things when they were originally set up, but in ways that are very different. Now, economic tech, which is what we're really creating here, has the ability to reduce the need for command and control. Who would have believed that if we said, look, here's our business model. We're going to create this coin, and we're going to basically use it to transfer money around. And the data centers that are going to make all this stuff work are not going to be controlled by anybody. They're going to be decentralized around the world, and people are going to spend the amount of money for the actual power consumption of the country of Scotland twice every day to run these data centers. And we're going to have more computing hardware that's worth more than all of the data centers run by Fortune 500 companies by an order of magnitude. And there's going to be no command and control. Who would have thought that was possible? But that's what runs the Bitcoin mining process today, which is what makes Bitcoin work. Now, so why does government miss the point? Well, that's because when new ideas come along, they look like this. And what people say is, well, gee whiz, who would actually want one of those when we got one of these? Right? That's what kind of happens. But what's really happening is something else altogether, and that's this. That evolves into that. See, the principle here is that this is Bitcoin. This is what's going to happen in the future. Bitcoin is just the first. It's like this. I had one of these with a serial number that was under 1,000 that a friend of mine gave me, literally, to start learning how to program on. That's what that looks like today. I just got to have me one of those. All right. So the question here is, if we look at what's going on in Bitcoin and all the criticisms of the dark web, and we look at the cryptocurrencies and the ICO craze and everything, can we actually build a good cryptocurrency, a cryptocurrency that has a positive set of facts? One that prevents bad actors, not allows for bad actors to exist. So you can't use it for money laundering. Doesn't work. One that has all of the KYC and AML and identity kind of validations built in. Has real intrinsic value, not a value that is basically just based on sentiment. Acts as a unit of accounting. By the way, if you don't know this, if it doesn't act as a unit of accounting, you really can't it can't be a security. It's one of the three, currencies, one of the three basic attributes of any currency. Is a rapid medium of exchange. I don't know how many of you have actually tried to buy stuff with Bitcoin. I have, and it takes a ridiculous amount of time to know whether the transaction goes through. It's better than transferring money overseas with my bank, I'll admit that, but it's not terribly great user experience. Provides a stable store of value. This is really important because if you don't have a stable store of value, then you either encourage hoarding or massive spending, neither of which are healthy for economies. offers full recourse. That means if you buy a container of electronics from Taiwan and it shows up and it's filled with sand, you actually can get your money back. And offers something that is very important, which is it's very difficult to steal. I can't just come up and use a rubber hose attack on you and say, you know, give me your electronic wallet and transfer the money into my account and disappear, and gee whiz, I'm out of all that money. So Sweetbridge is about building economic tech that makes these things possible and other things that are possible that seem impossible when you first talk about them. And we want to kind of walk through some of these. The first is payment without money. Now, this isn't to say payment without some kind of exchange, but payment without actually using any money at all. And how does that work? Well, first we got to understand the scope of the problem. This is the process that commerce works through. Somebody takes something out of the ground, that's where everything starts, and transforms it through a set of processes that may have many, many, many actors involved till it's finally consumed by you when you walk into a shop and buy it. In each of those loops where it says order to payment, they take 54 days on average worldwide. At any given time, there's $30 trillion tied up in this process. And this process generates $54 trillion of GDP. That's 2/3 of the global economy is generated by this process. Over $120 trillion of inventory are tied up in this process at any given time. And this engine here drives the world. All of the other things that we include in GDP actually don't make anything. And this thing produces everything you eat, everything you consume, everything you wear, everything you live in, everything you drive, all of those things. So it's really big, and it's really important because 7 out of every 8 people on the planet work in that chain, work in that process. Now, to understand how you can actually make payments without money, we have to first understand that in trade, money is actually a unit of measure. What it allows you to do is move profits around from one accounting system to another. And the way this came home to me in my prior job was when I visited Cargill, which is one of the biggest agri-conglomerates out there. And they were explaining to me how they make money. They make money by buying and selling commodities like, you know, rice and other kinds of agricultural products. And they simply make entries in their accounting system instead of actually having to move any money. They just make a debit and credit. That's it. They only move the money once in a while, whenever they need to rebalance where the money is positioned. But a competitor, a small competitor, has to actually turn their product into cash, where they have a cost of doing that. They have to take that cash and convert it into another currency, because it's probably in a country like, say, Vietnam or someplace, and nobody wants to get Vietnamese dong. So it has to be converted into dollars. They pay a huge fee on that. It's about 12%, by the way, to convert from dong to dollars. That has to then get transmitted to somebody else. There's all sorts of financial intermediaries in that process that take everything out of the process. So on average, this big agri-conglomerate basically can take out of the whole process about 20% of the cost. That means a competitor, a small independent company, a small independent farmer, small independent trader has to be 20% more efficient than they are in order to compete. And all they do is move things around in accounting. This is when it dawned on me, oh my goodness, money is nothing more than a unit of measure. And to prove this, I can have something of value, doesn't matter what it is, could be your house. You go through a purchase and sell that to somebody, and you get money. Well, where'd the money come from? Well, you say, well, it came from somebody else. Well, no, actually it came from the fact that somebody else thought that that house was valuable. That's where it was. And the value, the amount of money you got, was what we say, my home is worth this. Ever heard somebody say that? That's what they're communicating. And this is the value. It's just an accounting system. It's just a way of measuring value. Now, this means that if you know what the value of something is because you have a market to determine it and a marketplace to sell it, then you actually don't need to use money at all to actually transfer value between parties. And this means that using the Sweetbridge instant settlement process, you can literally have a business that has no receivables, has no payables, and has no working capital. And you can say, well, how on earth does that work? $54 trillion of GDP. What is GDP? It's profit. It's the profit. It's not the sales number. Sales number is way larger than that. The number of sales that are made worldwide is way bigger than that. That's the profit. All we have to do is move the profit. We don't need to actually move anything else. Everything else is just an accounting entry. Sweetbridge has created a protocol that allows you to do this. It uses this, something we call BRC. BRC, question mark, question mark, question mark. The question marks stand for the currency of your choice. So if you're in the Philippines and you want BRC Philippine peso, that's fine. If you're in the United States, BRC USD, well, that's fine. This is a stable token available in the fiat currency of your choice that is perfectly stable and is 100% asset-backed. This is different than fiat currency. Fiat currency is backed by the economy of the country that produces it and backed by sentiment in that economy, that the economy will be, able to stand behind that currency in the future. This is actually backed by assets. There are $700 trillion worth of valued assets in the world, and there are only about 60 to 70 trillion, depending on what you call currency, dollars or what its equivalent in currency in the world, which that's a problem because it means most of the money in the world is locked up inside of assets. And we can't get at it. Because we can't get at it, we can't spend it. When we can't spend it, we can't actually generate economic activity. Now, BRC works unlike Bitcoin in that it is fast, scalable, and low cost, which means it can actually be used to do micropayments. I'll show you how much it costs later. And it is corruption resistant, which means that it actually is designed to be used in situations like third world countries where there are bad actors who try to basically use mechanisms of coercion, and compliant. And it is safe, meaning that it can't be stolen. It's very difficult to steal. The reason for this is the identities of the people actually conducting the transactions are known to the system, but they are protected in ways that you can only access them when there is an issue that requires it to be accessed, such as a dispute in trade or a case where a government has a legal right to access the information. So this means that it can be actually used by law enforcement when a crime occurs. It can be used in a dispute between parties in a lawsuit, et cetera, et cetera. Now, BRC, of any of the flavors, is fully KYC AML enforced because identities are not anonymous, they're actually known. And it is a cash equivalent. Now, this is extremely important to understand. To be a cash equivalent, something has to be both stable and liquidatable within 5 business days. What this means is that it can be carried on the balance sheet of a company as if it's cash, but it's not. It's known as cash equivalent. That means we can provide it to parties in a supply chain as if they got paid, as if they had actually moved the cash. And it shows up on their balance sheet as cash. This is not a trick. This is not something that is being manipulated in any way. As a project, we have 6 actually monetary economists on the project. Two are ex-Federal Reserve economists. We've got quants and bankers and all sorts of people that have worked in spaces who understand this stuff. And this is actually not a trick. It actually conforms to all the laws of accounting and all of the history of 5,500 years of banking. In fact, it's how it was done. It is an environment that supports recourse and indemnification. Now, what this means is this enables payments of the future. This is where you can use a computer or a phone as a wallet instead of a bank account. And you can pay with or without money. That means you can actually pay just out of the value of the assets that are in a supply chain or commerce, or in your home or your car. And you can send that anywhere in minutes, and the network has a cost of about 1 basis point to, which is, if you don't know, 10,000th of a percent, to 0.01 basis points. This is an order of magnitude lower than the cost of any bank-based settlement system today, and is 3 orders of magnitude lower cost than using a credit card. Our second token is SweetCoin. SweetCoin is a very unique kind of token. It's a discount token, and it plays a very interesting role in our economy. It is not designed for investment. It is designed for use. It is specifically, we can actually show mathematically, we've got papers out there on our website that prove this, that if you had a completely open environment where it was completely available to both investor type people who would buy it and hold it, or users who would actually buy it and use it, users would always end up owning it. And the reason is that its value to a user will always exceed its value to an investor. Therefore, a user would always be willing to pay more for it. And it's like commercial property as a result of that. The discounts it produces grows as the network grows. So it rewards the people that use the network for using the network. It enables things that seem impossible, like really low interest rates for developing countries or developing small businesses, or even interest-free loans. How would you like an interest-free loan on your house? Well, that's what it does. It has a measurable value as a result of this. It's not based on sentiment. It actually has a value you can calculate. And its value is how much discount does it provide on a monthly basis. And each SweetCoin has a value. At our network launch, that value will be around 6-7 cents based on the current economic activity that we will be generating. So this enables a business of the future. In a business of the future, we increase the amount of cash on balance sheets, we would decrease the working capital requirement of the business to 0, and we improve the profitability of the business. A side effect of all this is generating transparency in supply chains. Now, to give you an idea of how big this is, we met with a really large pharmaceutical medical device company that is in a POC with us, and the effect for them would be $1 billion on the balance sheet, a reduction of working capital by 27 days, and a decrease in their operating expense of 2% as an organization, increasing their profit margin by 2%. We've also done the same look for a small business in a foreign country. It's in a developing country environment, and the effect is dramatically better. You're talking about things like in the international rice trade, reducing the cost of rice by 10% to the average consumer, and doubling or tripling the amount of money that everyone in the supply chain actually makes off of the rice, for example. Now, the second impossible thing that the system allows is the ability for you to loan yourself money. Now, the only reason you haven't been able to do this in the past is nobody trusted you. That's it. The reason we have to have a bank is we have to have somebody to hold the thing that you're pledging when you basically borrow money, whether it's your future income or and some right against it, or your house and some right against it. So this enables loans of the future. Low to zero interest rates, terms set by you. Now, if you loan yourself money, guess what? What happens if you want to renegotiate the loan? Who do you renegotiate it with? Yourself. So do you want to let yourself renegotiate your loan? Well, that's kind of up to you. What if you want to not make a payment? Let's say you're going to skip a payment. Is that going to hurt your credit rating? Well, no, because there's no credit rating, there's no credit reporting. And is that okay with you? Well, the only rule you have to basically maintain is that the value of your assets have to be worth more than what you owe by an amount that's determined by our economic board and council. This means there's no credit checks, there's no application. You can literally do this in minutes. And the approval is based on the value of a balance sheet that actually controls your assets. So unlike a typical accounting balance sheet, it's not just a record that says this is what I think the value of things are. It is not what I think the assets are. It is the assets. It is the things and the liabilities that go with them. So funding in the future. Now this has a very powerful impact. Sweetbridge has an entire funding platform that can fund businesses of any size based on using future revenue. They do not have to give up any equity. It does not require an ICO or a token of any kind, and it does not require any debt. It basically takes a future revenue stream and offers it as a discount on our platform to our token holders. With a global support infrastructure, this means the entire world can participate in helping your coffee shop, helping your retail business, helping your mega website that's going to change the world. Now, how all this works, because it sounds like fantasy land. It's not. It's very simple. It's very based on solid economics. Basically, you have something gets locked up in a legal contract. That legal contract allows you to mine, using a smart contract, Bridgecoin. Bridgecoin can then be converted to fiat currency using one of several mechanisms. To explain all this, we've actually written multiple white papers, and they have a lot of math. Excuse us for having all that, but we wanted to provide all the evidence that this wasn't, make-believe for real people who are economists or quants to be able to understand the system. And the system basically uses positive feedback loops that generate rewards for people who do the right thing. And the right thing is to basically keep Bridgecoin in their wallet. If you keep Bridgecoin in your wallet, you get rewards. What your rewards are dependent on the regulatory environment and part of the world you live in. And these rewards provide the incentive for people with fiat to provide the fiat in the system that's necessary for those who want fiat in exchange for Bridgecoin to get it. And I won't try to explain all this because it would take about a half an hour and it would put most people to sleep. But if you're interested, go to our website, download the liquidity protocol, and you'll see this. Now, Sweetbridge is not a company. We are a movement. And to kind of explain that, this is kind of the point of the conversation tonight. Everything else was kind of lead up to this. We're a new business model. We use economic incentives instead of command and control structures. That means we don't have any centralized organization. There is no single place. I am not in charge of everything that's going on. People act as independent actors based on their own self-interest and on the interest of our members. And this is all designed to be able to scale very, very rapidly. So how do you enable something to scale rapidly? Well, this is what Sweetbridge looks like. When Sweetbridge started, those gray dots were the entities that were formed to initiate the Sweetbridge entity. You can think of it as the jump start of the system. When our network launches here in the next couple months, we will have 15 independent legal entities in 11 different countries. All of the orange kind of dots there are Sweetbridge financial entities. These are entities that exist to hold legal licenses to be able to do the kinds of things that we're talking about in different jurisdictions. Things like money transmission licenses and other things that are necessary to make the network work. The Sweetbridge Alliance, which is in blue, is headquartered in California and is entirely independent. And the Sweetbridge Foundation, which is a not-for-profit social enterprise that provides economic help to underdeveloped nations and underdeveloped countries using the Sweetbridge protocols, is also independent. These are all independent entities that are controlled by their members, not by me, not by anyone else. And in 2 years, these gray guys are going to die. They're going to go away. So why do all these entities exist? Well, we needed to do KYC AML in order to be compliant in different parts of the world, but there is not only is there no common definition of what you have to do in the United States between states, you actually don't have any common definition around the world in the different countries about what you have to do. And in many countries, the country, in order to feel good about you, if you're doing anything, they want the data maintained in their country. They do not want the data maintained outside of their country. So we have entities to basically do this. And there's a whole bunch of reasons in addition to this, but you basically have to have people who the government, the local government, can work with when you're dealing with real assets. So what controls all this? So each Sweetbridge entity is built around a common protocol and charter. And this common protocol and charter, anybody who wants to adopt it can start a new Sweetbridge entity. So anyone who follows the protocol and charter can establish a new Sweetbridge. You can think of it as Starbucks, except for financial stuff. Any new entity can be created as long as it just follows the rules. Now, how this works is that each Sweetbridge entity is controlled by its members. And we have a roadmap where the members take over here in about 2 years. Depending on the entity around the world, and then they're completely in charge within 7 years of the entity. These entities are run by the members. The members control the entity. They basically vote for the people that are running the entity. They tell the entity what they like, what they don't like. They're entirely controlled by their membership. Now, in order for Sweetbridge to be what it needs to be, we have to have at least one entity in every country in the world, because there's trade everywhere in the world. My last business, we did activity in 196 countries around the world. And this means that we have to be able to allow many people, many organizations to set up new Sweetbridge operations in each country. But you not only have to do it in each country, in many countries, there will be multiple Sweetbridge organizations because there is no such thing as a monopoly or a unique ability to be a Sweetbridge entity. There can be any number of Sweetbridge entities in the United States, any number of Sweetbridge entities in China, any number of, assuming we can get the Chinese government to work with us, any number in India, any number in the UK, doesn't matter. Now, the design of the system is to basically do entity forking. So if a minority of members don't like how their entity is run, what do you do when you have an entity that's controlled by majority? Well, the way you solve this is you fork. You create a new entity. The new entity then takes the members that want to form the new entity and they become the new entity. So the fact that this is written into the charter and into the protocol basically means that anytime anybody doesn't like what's going on, they can vote with their feet. And they can go off and start something new. This, by the way, means that the entities want to serve their members because they have the threat of losing their members because the members get together and basically a minority takes the stuff off and starts a whole new thing. I wish governments worked this way. Now, last thing. How are Sweetcoin and Bridgecoin structured? Because there's a real big question here, and that is, are all tokens alike? If you listen to some of the press coming out today about securities and whether tokens are securities and whatnot, we hear things like, well, never seen any different, any token that's not a security. Well, we have some very different economic behaviors in our two tokens. And so one of the key questions is, what does this all mean? So first, BRC is stable, okay, pegged to fiat currency. Profit can only come from its use. Owning it doesn't generate any profit at all. It's a unit of accounting. It's a method of payment and a store of value, which means it meets every official economics textbook on the planet's definition of a currency. It's asset-backed and has intrinsic value, and it is whitelisted. What this means is that you cannot just transfer it to somebody else who isn't already KYC or AML'd as a member. So because of that, you can't possibly use it to do, bad acting, like money laundering or other kinds of things. Just not at all an effective way of doing it. Then the economic behavior of Sweetcoin. Again, these are very different. It has a value when it is sold. The value when it is sold is always less than its 5-year intrinsic value, or once it goes into market drip, we only accept that value and anything else is given back to our marketplace as incentives that feed back into our system once the network is fully up and operational. Which means if there are any market forces out there that create an unrealistic value, any benefit from the unrealistic value doesn't ever go back to Sweetbridge or any of the organizations involved. It goes right back into the community. This is a way of basically disincentivizing people from doing crazy things with its value. Value is again created from use. If you do not lock it in a wallet, one of our wallets, and actually purposefully lock it there, it is not going to do anything for you. If you lock it in your wallet, you get the discount. If you don't lock it in your wallet, you don't. So if you just own it, it's not going to do a darn thing. Mathematically, we can prove that Sweetcoin does not have any of the properties of a security. You can't short sell it. You can't do an option sale. Wouldn't make any sense. And in fact, it shares all of the same properties of commercial real estate. Nobody here buys a building like the one we're in and leaves it empty. Well, the building's got value. What if the value is going to go up? You ought to buy it. The real estate agent says, well, property values in this area are really moving up. You ought to buy now. If you buy it, you're still going to rent it if you're not going to use it yourself, because otherwise you would lose a revenue stream from rental. And if that's the only mechanism you're going to use for compensating yourself, someone else will pay more for the building. So users always win. Not sold for profit until our network is in use. Not sold to public. We will not sell our Sweetcoin to the public until our actual network is launched. And we only sell it to customers. So, and we are deadly serious about this. We only sell it to customers. We are only interested in customers, but we are interested in customers for life. Because we think that customers will want discounts for life. Why would you want to give up the ability to have interest-free loans, for example? Now, U.S. competitiveness. The regulatory view today. So currently today, the only nation the only top 10 industrial nation in the world that we cannot sell Bridgecoin or Sweetcoin in is China and the United States. Those are the only two. Everywhere else in the world, they love us. The reason we can't sell them here is lack of clarity. Now, the issue here is, can you do a non-security offering? Because if you basically say, okay, let's do a Reg D offering in the United States, that would mean only the richest 1% of the people in the United States could buy Sweetcoin. And if those were the only people that could buy Sweetcoin, then the problem with that would be only the rich could get richer. And we are not about to enable that because we are not about that as a project. We're not interested in allowing the rich to get richer. We want the poor to have an equal opportunity with the rich. We want small business to have the same opportunity that large businesses have at access to capital. The second problem is that if, let's say we could do a Reg A plus. Well, the problem is, how do you meet the reporting requirements of a Reg A plus when there is no central control, there is no single entity? Who does the report? Who's the analyst call? Which entity is it? Does every entity have to do it? Or does just one entity have to do it? What if that entity conducts business in the United States? Does that mean every entity around the world has to actually do a separate Reg A plus? Makes absolutely no sense. So because we have lack of clarity about this and because we want to be good actors, we want to basically say, no, sorry, the US can't do it here. These are my predictions. It might be true, might not be true, but I believe they will be true. The US is going to lose the dominance of the dollar as a result of this. And if the Treasury Department actually understood this, they would basically scare the absolute willies out of Congress. Because if the US loses the dominance of the dollar in trade, the United States economy will collapse. It will absolutely collapse, and that's what's at risk. Innovation will move offshore. That's already happening. We are going to not be able to get an ability to do payments without money in the United States. That means small businesses and the disadvantaged in developing environments aren't going to be able to get access to interest-free loans or low-cost loans, nor will they be able to get access to funding to help grow their businesses. And the US will get to be late to the game. It's going to wake up once it's too late. And it's hard to actually know this and be a US citizen and actually watch this. It's a great pain to me. We believe that we are trying to actually do something for common good. We are not doing this for profit. We are not doing this for a bunch of shareholders. We're doing this for a community. And we have specifically decided to give it to the world. The reason we've decided to do that is I had sold my old business and was sitting on a beach. And I could have sat on a beach the rest of my life if I wanted to. But what I realized was that if I didn't get in the game, somebody who was a whole lot younger than I was going to get in the game. And when I was 19 or 20, I thought I knew how everything in the world worked. And what I didn't realize is that I was kind of arrogant, and I didn't realize that I was kind of naive, and I certainly lacked wisdom. Now, I've met some really smart 19-year-olds, so maybe that's not true of all of them, but it scared me that, today there may be 100 people on Earth that are going to be writing the protocols on the blockchain which are going to control the economies of the world for the next 50 years. And that scared me so much that I thought, well, I want to actually be the person that did it. The next thing that scared me is if these things control the economies of the world and somebody writes it and the people that write it are for profit, we are going to see the first trillion-dollar businesses. That ought to scare you. A trillion-dollar business is way too much power in somebody that nobody votes for. It's way too much power in somebody nobody votes for. So we believe that we are providing economic tech for transformation. And I want to give a couple just use cases that go beyond the ones that are kind of personal. Our whole token system is designed for local areas to be able to be built to create LETs. We're talking about doing this in all sorts of parts of the world. A LET is a local exchange token system. This is an ability for you to conduct transactions locally without actually using currency. There are many of these in the world. You can go look them up on the web that have been out there. Probably the most successful is run by the WIR Bank, WIR, if you're interested in looking it up. 70 years old, had an absolutely stable token for 70 years. And we believe that these things can actually be used to help depressed economic environments here in the United States and all over the world. The next is the case of community development through underutilized assets. The Federal Reserve has been tracking the utilization of supply chain assets for almost 50 years. And during the 50-year period, last 50 years, They've gone from being utilized at a level of 90% to being utilized at a level of now less than 75%. We are getting less and less and less efficient. This means that there are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, nobody even knows how much, of unutilized assets that are sitting in supply chains, sitting in communities that are out there around the world. And this is something that we can revitalize, we can reuse, using the Sweetbridge technology. And then a community use. So these discount tokens and discount token designs actually provide a much better mechanism for local governments to actually provide funding for things that they sell bonds for today. They can offer a discount token instead, a discount token which will pay for schools, pay for infrastructure in that community, and which gives taxpayers a discount on their taxes. They can do this in a way that brings money in now, for which they do not make a financial commitment to the future other than offering a discount on their token. The discount goes to taxpayers. Guess who the taxpayers locally who have the most money? They're the same taxpayers that can pay the lawyers and accountants to basically shelter that money. So what you're doing is you're getting the very people who would otherwise find ways of sheltering it to shelter it by actually paying for the things that you want them to pay for in the society. And then if the economy tanks and goes through a downturn, unlike a bond service, which is flat, discount tokens keep a proportion of the revenue going to discounts, not a flat fixed amount. And when the economy grows and expands, it means you can actually release more. Because the way a discount token works is as the economy grows, you can drip more into the system. This means when you have boom times is when you raise money. Guess when the hardest time to raise taxes are? When you have a surplus, when you have a boom time. Guess what the most important time to raise taxes are? When you have a surplus. Why? Because you know you'll have a downturn. You always have, and you always will. This provides a mechanism for doing that. So, this is all about creating the economics of possibility, and we are interested in using tokens and economic tech to change the way the financial world works. So at this point, I believe we have Carolyn coming back up and we'll take questions from people. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm sorry that I was so long-winded.